The story of Methuselah begins not with a kingdom, a battle, or a city. It begins with a genealogy, a record of generations, a name passed from one generation to the next, carrying the history of humanity from Adam forward. Among these names appears a man whose lifespan would become unlike any other recorded in Scripture. His name is Methuselah. But before Methuselah enters the record, Scripture first introduces his father, Enoch. Enoch was 65 years old when he fathered Methuselah, and from that moment a new generation entered the biblical record. Methuselah was born into the line descending from Adam. The genealogy, recorded in Genesis, traces the generations one after another: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, and then Methuselah, 7 generations after Adam. The record does not begin by describing Methuselah's childhood. It does not tell of his appearance. It does not record his words. Instead, Scripture gives the facts. Enoch was 65 years old when Methuselah was born. After Methuselah's birth, Enoch lived another 300 years, and during those years Enoch fathered sons and daughters. The generations continued, the family line continued, and Methuselah remained within that unfolding genealogy. His name would eventually become associated with a number almost impossible to comprehend: 969 years. But that number belongs to the end of his recorded life. For now, Methuselah has only just entered the story, a child born to Enoch, a descendant of Adam, a name standing at the beginning of a life that would span centuries. And Scripture continues its record. Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Then the genealogy moves forward. From Enoch to Methuselah, the generations that came before him had already passed their names into the record. Now Methuselah's name stands among them, and his life will carry the genealogy forward to another generation, to his son Lamech. But before that next generation appears, Methuselah must live through centuries that Scripture records with remarkable simplicity. His life will become the longest lifespan recorded in the biblical genealogies. Yet the story does not begin with the number 969. It begins with 65, the age of his father when he was born, a single birth recorded within a chain of generations, a child entering the line of Adam. And from that beginning, the years of Methuselah's life stretch farther than any other human lifespan. The genealogy has reached Methuselah, and his story has begun. The record continues with a simple statement. Enoch was 65 years old, and he fathered Methuselah. This is where the life of Methuselah enters the biblical record. No description is given of the circumstances surrounding his birth. No words are recorded from the child. Scripture simply identifies him through his place in the generations. Methuselah was the son of Enoch, and Enoch was a descendant of Adam through the generations recorded in Genesis. The genealogy moves carefully from one name to another. Adam fathered Seth. Seth fathered Enosh. Enosh fathered Kenan. Kenan fathered Mahalalel. Mahalalel fathered Jared. Jared fathered Enoch. And Enoch fathered Methuselah. The line continues, generation after generation, and now Methuselah stands within it. But the record does not end with his birth. Genesis continues by telling us what happened to Enoch after Methuselah was born. After he fathered Methuselah, Enoch lived 300 years. During those years, Enoch fathered other sons and daughters. His life continued. His family continued. And the genealogy continued. And Enoch's total lifespan was 365 years. Then Scripture moves forward once again. The record continues through Enoch's son, Methuselah. At this point, the Bible has given only a few details about him. His father was Enoch. His father was 65 when Methuselah was born. And Methuselah belonged to the seventh generation from Adam in the genealogy recorded in Genesis. But his place in the record would become extraordinary. The genealogy gives ages with precision. The years of each generation are counted. The names are preserved. And when the record reaches Methuselah, the number of his years will surpass every other lifespan listed in the passage. But that moment has not yet arrived. For now Methuselah is simply the son of Enoch. The generations continue moving forward. And Methuselah will eventually become a father himself. The next name in his line will be Lamech. Genesis records that Methuselah was 187 years old when he fathered Lamech. That event marks the next major point. But before reaching that moment, the genealogy pauses on the identity of the man at its center, Methuselah, born when his father Enoch was 65, a descendant of Adam, a son, and soon a father. The years ahead will transform a single name into the man who lived 969 years. But the story begins here, with Enoch, with a son, and with the name Methuselah entering the record of Scripture. The years pass, and the biblical record continues to count them. Methuselah reaches 187 years. At that age, Scripture records another important event in his life. Methuselah fathers a son. His name is Lamech. The genealogy has moved forward once again. Enoch had fathered Methuselah. Now Methuselah has fathered Lamech. The line continues from one generation to the next. There is no extended account of Lamech's birth. Scripture simply records the fact. Methuselah was 187 years old when Lamech was born. And after the birth of Lamech, Methuselah's life continued for another 782 years. 782 more years, the number is recorded plainly. And during those years, Methuselah fathered other sons and daughters. His family increased, his generation continued, and the years of his life continued to accumulate. The biblical record gives no detailed account of the events of those centuries. Instead, it preserves the numbers. 187 years before Lamech, 782 years after Lamech. Together, those years establish the extraordinary length of Methuselah's life, 969 years. But before the final number is reached, another generation appears, Lamech, the son of Methuselah. And Lamech himself will later become the father of a son whose name is known throughout the biblical story, Noah. Genesis records Lamech's words concerning the birth of Noah, but that comes later in the genealogy. For now, the record remains focused on Methuselah, a man who has reached 187 years, a father of Lamech, and a man whose life still has centuries remaining. The genealogy continues to count. Methuselah lives. His sons and daughters are born. The generations move forward, and the years continue. There is something striking in the simplicity of the record. No elaborate account is given. No list of achievements is presented. The text does not describe kingdoms founded by Methuselah. It does not record battles fought by him. It does not give speeches or journeys. Instead, his life is preserved through genealogy and time. He was born. He became a father. He had sons and daughters, and he lived. For Methuselah, The biblical record is measured in generations and years. His father Enoch had lived 365 years. Methuselah would live far longer. His son, Lamech, would continue the family line, and through Lamech would come Noah. The generations are connected. Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Each name carries the genealogy forward, and Methuselah stands between Enoch and Lamech. His place is fixed in the record. At 187 years he became the father of Lamech. Then the years continued. 782 more years. 782 years in which Methuselah remained part of the generations recorded in Scripture. And when those years were complete, his total would reach a number unmatched anywhere else in the biblical record. 969. But that final moment is still ahead. For now the story continues through Methuselah's long life, and beside his name stands another name, Lamech, the son born to Methuselah after 187 years. The next generation had arrived, and the genealogy moved forward. The record of Methuselah now enters its longest stretch. Genesis gives the numbers plainly. Methuselah was 187 years old when he fathered Lamech. After that, Methuselah lived 782 years. 782 years. The number alone sets his life apart. During those years, Methuselah fathered other sons and daughters. His family continued to grow. The generations continued, and Methuselah continued to live. The biblical account does not provide a detailed chronicle of those centuries. It does not list the events of each year. It does not describe cities, journeys, battles, or speeches belonging to Methuselah. Instead, Scripture preserves the length of his life, 187 years before Lamech, 782 years afterward. Together, those numbers establish the total, 969 years. Methuselah lived 969 years. Then the record gives the final statement. He died. That is the entire recorded lifespan of Methuselah, 969 years from his birth to his death. No other person in the biblical genealogical record is given a longer lifespan. His name therefore becomes permanently connected with the greatest age recorded in Scripture. But Methuselah's years were not isolated from the generations around him. His life stretched across several generations. His father was Enoch, his son was Lamech, and his grandson was Noah. Methuselah lived long enough for the next generations of his family to appear. Lamech was born. Lamech later became the father of Noah, and Noah's birth took place while Methuselah was still alive. The genealogy therefore places Methuselah within a remarkable chain of generations. Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Each name follows the previous one, and Methuselah occupies the central position between Enoch and Lamech. His lifespan stretches across centuries, yet Scripture remains remarkably restrained in its description. There is no separate book devoted to him. There is no extended account of his words. There is no narrative describing his daily life. His story is preserved through the genealogical record. His age, his children, his descendants, and finally his death. The number 969 stands at the center of his biblical identity. It is the sum of the years recorded for his life, 187 years before the birth of Lamech, 782 years afterward, 969 years in total, and then he died. The genealogy does not stop with Methuselah. The generations continue. His son Lamech continues the line. Lamech's son Noah will become the next major name in the genealogy, and Methuselah's name remains connected to both generations, father, son, grandson, 3 generations standing together within the same recorded line. But Methuselah's own life has already established something extraordinary. The longest lifespan recorded in the Bible, 969 years. A life measured not in decades, but in centuries. And when those centuries finally came to their recorded end, Scripture gave the final words with the same simplicity. Methuselah lived 969 years, and he died. The number was complete. The life was complete. But the genealogy was not, because Methuselah's son, Lamech, was still part of the unfolding story. And through Lamech, another name was about to take its place in the record, Noah. The story of Methuselah is preserved within a larger record, a genealogy. Generation after generation, the names are written down. The line begins with Adam, and from Adam, the generations continue. Adam, Seth, Enosh, Cainan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, and then Lamech. And after Lamech comes Noah. Methuselah stands within this chain as the son of Enoch and the father of Lamech. His name is not presented as an isolated figure. He belongs to a continuing family line. A generation receives the name of the generation before it, and then passes that line forward. Methuselah's place in this genealogy is precise. He is the son of Enoch. Enoch fathered Methuselah when he was 65 years old. Methuselah later fathered Lamech when he was 187. And after Lamech was born, Methuselah lived another 782 years. During that time he fathered other sons and daughters. The genealogy therefore records not only the passing of years, but the continuation of the family. Methuselah's life stretches across centuries, and within those centuries another generation is born. Lamech, the genealogy moves forward through him. Then Lamech becomes the father of Noah, and Noah becomes part of the next stage of the biblical record. Methuselah's name therefore stands between 2 important generations. Before him is Enoch, after him is Lamech, and through Lamech comes Noah. The genealogy preserves these connections. There is no need to add anything beyond what the record states. The names themselves tell the sequence. Enoch fathered Methuselah. Methuselah fathered Lamech. Lamech fathered Noah. The generations continue. And Methuselah's exceptionally long life means that his name belongs to a period in which several generations of his family appear within the same record. His lifespan reaches 969 years. The biblical text records this number at the end of his life, but the genealogy continues beyond him. The story does not end when Methuselah's life ends. His descendants remain in the record. His son Lamech remains. His grandson Noah remains. And the line continues forward. The significance of Methuselah within the genealogy is therefore more than his age alone. His name connects one generation to another. He is the son of Enoch. He is the father of Lamech. He is the grandfather of Noah. And through the genealogical records preserved elsewhere in Scripture, his name continues to be remembered. 1 Chronicles lists Methuselah among the descendants of Adam. The genealogy again places his name within the ancient line. The same name that appears in Genesis is preserved in another biblical record. Centuries later, Luke also includes Methuselah in a genealogy. His name appears in the line that reaches toward Jesus. The genealogy continues. The names are preserved, and Methuselah remains part of that recorded line, from Adam to Seth, from Seth through the generations, to Enoch, to Methuselah, to Lamech, to Noah, and beyond. The biblical record does not require Methuselah to be described through dramatic deeds. His place is already established. His life is recorded. His descendants are recorded. His name is preserved, and his lifespan remains unmatched in the biblical record. 969 years. But the story has not yet reached its full genealogical significance, because while Methuselah's life continues, another generation appears, Lamech, and through Lamech comes Noah, Methuselah's grandson, a name that will carry the genealogy forward into another major stage of the biblical story. The generations continue, and the name of Methuselah remains within them. The genealogy moves forward through Methuselah's son. His name is Lamech. Genesis records that Methuselah was 187 years old when he fathered Lamech. After Lamech was born, Methuselah continued to live for 782 years, and during those years, Lamech grew within the same family line. The generations continued. Methuselah's life continued, and eventually Lamech became a father. His son was named Noah. Noah was born during the lifetime of Methuselah. This places 3 generations within the same recorded line. Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, father, son, grandson. The genealogy connects them together. When Lamech became the father of Noah, Scripture records the words associated with Noah's name. Lamech said that his son would bring relief from their work and from the toil of their hands, from the ground that the Lord had cursed. The name Noah therefore appears in the genealogy with an explanation connected to what Lamech said about him. But the biblical record remains focused on the generations. Methuselah had fathered Lamech. Lamech had fathered Noah, and Noah was now part of the continuing line. Methuselah was still alive. His life had already reached centuries beyond the birth of Lamech. The record of his years continued. 187 years had passed before Lamech was born. Then 782 more years would follow, and within that vast span of time, Noah was born as Methuselah's grandson. The genealogy had reached another generation. Noah's name now stood beside those that came before him: Lamech, Methuselah, Enoch. And farther back, the generations leading to Adam, the line remained connected. The biblical record does not give a detailed account of Methuselah's relationship with Noah. It does not record conversations between them. It does not describe their daily lives together. It simply establishes a genealogy. Noah was Lamech's son. Lamech was Methuselah's son. Therefore Noah was Methuselah's grandson, and Noah was born while Methuselah was still alive. That single fact places Noah's birth within Methuselah's extraordinary lifespan. Methuselah had lived for generations. Now his grandson had entered the record. The family line continued. But Methuselah's own lifespan still had not reached its conclusion. His recorded years continued toward the number that would become his defining mark: 969 years. The genealogy would eventually record his death. But before that, his grandson Noah had already been born. The generations had advanced again. From Enoch came Methuselah. From Methuselah came Lamech. From Lamech came Noah. The line moved forward one generation at a time, and the name of Methuselah remained at the center of this ancient chain. He had lived long enough to see another generation enter the record. His son had become a father. His grandson had been born, and the genealogy continued. The story of Methuselah was never separated from the generations around him. His life was part of a line preserved in Scripture, a line beginning with Adam and continuing through the generations. And now Noah stood within it, Methuselah's grandson, the next generation. The story would continue through him. The genealogy has reached another generation. Lamech, the son of Methuselah, has become the father of a son, and he gives him the name Noah. Genesis records the reason given by Lamech for that name. He speaks of the child in connection with relief from the work and toil of human hands. The words are recorded as part of Noah's introduction into the genealogy. Noah is not an isolated name. He belongs to the line that has been moving. His father is Lamech. His grandfather is Methuselah. And before Methuselah came Enoch. The genealogy continues backward through the generations to Adam. At the time Noah is born, Methuselah is still alive. This means that the three generations stand within the same period of the genealogy. Methuselah had lived 187 years before becoming the father of Lamech. After that, he lived another 782 years. Within those years, Lamech was born, grew older, and became the father of Noah. The biblical record therefore places Noah's birth within Methuselah's lifetime. Noah's arrival marks another step in the continuation of the family line. The genealogy does not provide a detailed account of the relationship between them. It does not record conversations between them. It does not describe Methuselah teaching Noah. It does not describe them traveling together. What Scripture does give is the genealogy itself. Lamech fathered Noah. Noah was named by Lamech. And Noah entered the recorded line descending from Adam. The generations continue. The name Methuselah remains connected to that line through his son. His grandson has now been named. Methuselah's life is still measured by the extraordinary number attached to it. 969 years. His lifespan extends across the generations recorded in Genesis. He lives long enough for his son Lamech to become a father. He lives long enough for his grandson Noah to enter the record. And still the genealogy continues. Noah's name becomes the next link. The story is no longer only about one man living for an extraordinary length of time. It is also about a genealogy being preserved across generations. Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Each name follows another. Each generation carries the line forward. Born as the son of Enoch, father of Lamech, grandfather of Noah, and the man whose recorded lifespan would reach 969 years. But Noah's birth is not the end of Methuselah's story. Methuselah still has years remaining. The number recorded for his life has not yet been completed, and eventually the record will reach the final statement concerning Methuselah. He lived 969 years, and he died, but that conclusion is still ahead. For now, the generations remain connected. Noah has entered the record. Lamech has become his father, and the ancient line continues forward, from Adam through the generations, to Enoch, to Methuselah, to Lamech, and now to Noah. The name of Methuselah does not appear only once in Scripture. His place in the generations is preserved again. The first book of Chronicles records the genealogy beginning with Adam, Seth, Enosh, and the generations continue. Among those names stands Methuselah. His name remains connected to the line descending from Adam. The genealogy does not provide a new story about his life. It confirms his place. Methuselah belongs to the generations that came from Adam. The same man first recorded in Genesis appears again in the genealogical record. His identity remains unchanged. He is the son of Enoch. He is the father of Lamech, and he belongs to the line extending from Adam. The genealogy is a record of descent. One name leads to another. One generation follows another, and Methuselah remains part of that chain. His father was Enoch. Enoch's father was Jared. Jared's father was Mahalalel, and the generations continue backward until Adam. The line is preserved. Methuselah's name is preserved within it. But the genealogy also looks forward. Methuselah's son was Lamech. Lamech's son was Noah. So the same man stands between generations that stretch both backward and forward. Behind him is Enoch. Before Enoch are the generations leading to Adam. Ahead of him is Lamech, and through Lamech comes Noah. This is the structure of the biblical genealogy. It connects people across generations. Methuselah's extraordinary lifespan gives his name particular distinction. Genesis records that he lived 969 years, but the genealogies preserve more than his age. They preserve his place in the family line. His name is not forgotten. It is carried forward in the written record. 1 Chronicles includes him. Luke includes him. The ancient genealogy is repeated and preserved, and Methuselah remains within it. In Luke's genealogy, Methuselah appears again. His name is placed among the generations leading toward Jesus. The record traces the line through generations of fathers and sons. And there, once again, Methuselah's name appears. The same Methuselah who was born to Enoch, the same Methuselah who fathered Lamech, the same Methuselah who lived 969 years. His name has crossed generations, from Genesis to Chronicles, from the ancient genealogy to Luke's record. His life is preserved not through a separate narrative, but through the genealogical record. A name, a father, a son, a lifespan, a place in the line, and a death. The biblical record gives no additional biography beyond what is stated. There is no extended account of Methuselah's activities. There is no list of accomplishments attributed to him. There is no separate collection of his words. Instead, Scripture preserves the essential facts. Methuselah was born to Enoch. He fathered Lamech. He lived 969 years. He died, and his name remained in the genealogy. That genealogy reaches backward to Adam, and in Luke's record, it continues forward toward Jesus. Methuselah therefore remains part of a line that spans generations of biblical history. His name is carried forward. His place is recorded. His lifespan is remembered. 969 years. And still there is one final fact left to record. After a life longer than any other lifespan given in Scripture, Methuselah's years eventually came to their end. The genealogy will give the final statement. The number will be complete, the life will end, and the record will say simply, Methuselah died. The name of Methuselah does not disappear with the generations of Genesis. It remains. The biblical record carries his name forward into later genealogies. In the first book of Chronicles, Methuselah appears among the descendants of Adam. The genealogy preserves the ancient line, Adam, Seth, Enosh, and through the generations that follow, the line reaches Enoch, then Methuselah, then Lamech, then Noah, The names are recorded one after another. Generation follows generation, and Methuselah remains part of the line. But another genealogy reaches even farther. The Gospel according to Luke records a genealogy that traces the ancestry leading toward Jesus. And within that genealogy, Methuselah's name appears again. The ancient name has traveled across the generations. Methuselah, a son of Enoch, a father of Lamech, a grandfather of Noah, a man who lived 969 years. His name is now preserved in a genealogy that continues toward Jesus. Luke records the generations in sequence, and among them stands Methuselah, the same man known from the book of Genesis, the same man whose lifespan exceeded every other lifespan recorded in the biblical genealogies. The significance of the genealogy is found in its continuity. Names that belonged to ancient generations remain connected to later generations. Methuselah's name is one of those names. His place in the line is preserved. The genealogy does not erase the generations that came before. It carries them forward, from one generation to another, from the ancient descendants of Adam toward the later generations recorded by Luke, and Methuselah stands within that line. His life began with Enoch. His family continued through Lamech. His grandson was Noah, and his name remained in the genealogical record. The years of Methuselah's life were extraordinary, 969 years. But the biblical record preserves another kind of continuity as well. His name. It appears in Genesis. It appears in 1 Chronicles. And it appears in Luke. Across these records, Methuselah remains connected to the same ancestral line. The genealogy from Adam continues. The generations are remembered, and the line moves forward. Methuselah's place is therefore not limited to the account of his birth and death. His name becomes part of the larger biblical record of ancestry. The genealogy reaches backward toward Adam, and Luke's genealogy reaches forward toward Jesus. Between these generations, Methuselah's name remains. A man whose life lasted 969 years. A man who fathered Lamech. A man whose grandson was Noah, a descendant of Adam, and an ancestor named within the genealogy recorded by Luke. There is no additional biography given in these passages. No new speech, no new event, no new deed. Only the genealogy, only the names, only the line. And within that line, Methuselah remains. The centuries have passed, the generations have changed, but his name is still written. From the ancient genealogies of Genesis and Chronicles to the genealogy recorded by Luke, Methuselah's place remains. His life was extraordinarily long. His family line continued beyond him, and his name became part of the ancestral record leading through the generations. But the story of Methuselah has one final moment. The years recorded for him must eventually come to an end. The number 969 must be completed, and after those years, Scripture gives the final statement about his earthly life. He died. The genealogy has brought us to the end. The man who lived longer than any other person recorded in Scripture has reached the final year of his recorded life. 969 years. And then Methuselah died. The life of Methuselah reaches its final recorded moment. The numbers that have followed his name throughout the genealogy are now complete. 187 years before the birth of Lamech, 782 years after the birth of Lamech, together 969 years. Methuselah lived 969 years. Then the biblical record gives the final words concerning his life, and he died. There is no extended account of his final day, no description of his final words. No additional event is recorded. The scripture simply states the end of his life. Methuselah died. The man who entered the genealogy as the son of Enoch had now completed his lifespan. The father of Lamech was gone, but the generations continued. His son Lamech remained in the genealogy, and through Lamech came Noah. Methuselah had lived long enough for his grandson Noah to be born. His life therefore stretched across multiple generations, from Enoch to Methuselah to Lamech to Noah, and after 969 years, Methuselah's own place in the earthly genealogy came to its conclusion. Yet his name did not disappear. It remained written in Scripture. Genesis preserved the account of his life. First Chronicles preserved his place among the descendants of Adam. Luke preserved his name within the genealogy leading toward Jesus. The man had died, but the record of his name remained. Methuselah, 969 years. His story contains no separate chronicle of kingdoms or battles, no collection of speeches, no detailed account of his daily life. What Scripture preserves is the genealogy, his father, his son, his grandson, his years, and his death. Enoch fathered him when Enoch was 65. Methuselah later fathered Lamech when he was 187. After that he lived another 782 years. During those years he fathered other sons and daughters. Lamech became the father of Noah. Noah was therefore Methuselah's grandson, and Noah was born during Methuselah's lifetime. Then, after the completion of 969 years, Methuselah died. The number is extraordinary. Nearly 10 centuries of recorded life. Yet Scripture presents the fact with remarkable simplicity. He lived. He fathered children. His generations continued, and he died. His name then remained within the genealogical record. The generations continued forward, from Noah and beyond. And centuries later, the name of Methuselah would still be preserved. First Chronicles would include him among the descendants of Adam. Luke would include him in the genealogy leading toward Jesus. The generations had moved far beyond his lifetime, but his name remained connected to them. The man was gone. The genealogy remained. The years were finished. The name endured. Methuselah's story therefore ends where the biblical record places its final statement, not with a speech, but a simple declaration. Methuselah lived 969 years, and he died. His life had begun with Enoch. His name was preserved among the descendants of Adam. 969 years. One life, one name. Methuselah.